In all my years on the bench, I've seen countless cases walk through those courtroom doors. But every so often, you witness something that stays with you, a moment that reminds you why we do this work. Let me tell you about the morning that Chase Langford stepped into my courtroom and how everything he thought he owned came crashing down around him. The courtroom was absolutely packed that morning. I remember looking out at the gallery and feeling that electric silence, you know the kind I mean, when everyone senses something extraordinary is about to unfold. My bailiff announced the case, Tara Collins versus Chase Langford. Immediately, whispers rippled through the crowd. The Langford name carried weight in New York City. Their real estate dynasty had shaped our skyline, their towers reaching toward the heavens, their influence stretching deep into City Hall. When the courtroom doors opened, in walked a young man who looked every inch the heir to an empire. Chase Langford was 28 years old, tall, impeccably dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than most families spend on rent in a year. A diamond watch caught the fluorescent lights as he adjusted his cufflinks with practiced ease. I've seen this type before, that effortless arrogance that comes from never hearing the word no, not from teachers, not from police, not from anyone who mattered in his world. As he took his seat at the defendant's table, I noticed that faint smirk playing at his lips, the kind of expression that says, "This entire process is beneath me." I glanced down at my file, taking a moment to center myself. This was going to be interesting. "Mr. Langford," I said, keeping my tone businesslike and measured, "you're being sued by Miss Tara Collins for property damage amounting to $78,000. She claims that you and your associates vandalized her cafe following an altercation. Is that correct?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "Allegedly," he drawled, like the whole thing was some kind of joke. Now, I'm a patient man. I've learned over the years that patience often reveals more than confrontation. But there's a line. "Put the phone away, Mr. Langford," I said firmly. "You're not in a nightclub. You're in a court of law." He glanced up with that same faint smile and slipped the phone into his jacket pocket. "Of course, Your Honor," he said, his voice dripping with mock politeness that didn't escape my notice. Across from him sat Tara Collins, early 40s, simple blouse, eyes that had clearly seen too many long, difficult days. She wasn't glamorous or polished in the way Langford was, but there was something in how she held herself, a quiet strength, a determination that spoke of survival. Her hands were clasped tightly together, and though I could see she was nervous, her eyes burned with purpose. She had nothing left to lose, and that made her dangerous in the best possible way. I continued reading from the file before me. "It says here that Mr. Langford entered the plaintiff's business on the evening of March 21st with two companions. An argument ensued, property was damaged, and you left without paying for the damages. The plaintiff states you threatened her employees and claimed your father owned the block. Do you deny this?" Chase leaned back in his chair with an easy laugh. "Your Honor, look, this is a misunderstanding. My friends and I were at her cafe after hours. We might have knocked over a table. Accidents happen, right? I offered to pay for the damages that night, but she made it into a big deal. Probably realized who I was and decided to turn it into a payday." I looked at him carefully. "You offered to pay. I see no record of that." "I didn't put it in writing," he replied with a shrug. "We were just talking. People like her love to exaggerate things when they see a Langford involved." The audience reacted audibly, a low murmur spreading through the room. I saw Tara flinch, but she held her composure. I stopped writing and looked up at him slowly. The temperature in the room seemed to shift. "People like her," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. He smirked. "I meant small business owners, you know. They're always looking for someone to blame when things go wrong. It's the same everywhere." I said nothing for a moment. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any words. I let my pen tap against the bench, the sound echoing in the suddenly quiet courtroom. Then I turned to the plaintiff. "Miss Collins," I said gently, "tell me what happened that night." She spoke carefully, her voice trembling at first, but gaining strength as she went on. "He came in around 10:30. We were closing up. He demanded coffee even though the machines were already cleaned. When my staff politely told him we were closed, he laughed. He said, "Do you know who I am? My family owns this building." When my manager refused service, he got angry. He knocked over a chair, then a display stand. We asked him to leave. He told us we'd regret it. The next morning, our front windows were shattered. I turned my attention back to Chase. "Did you threaten this woman?" He chuckled dismissively. "Your Honor, I might have said something out of frustration, but come on, you'll regret it. It's a figure of speech." "Do you have any proof you didn't damage her property after leaving?" I asked. He smiled with lazy confidence. "Do I need proof to disprove something ridiculous? My father's lawyers already handled the police report. They found no evidence linking me to the damage, so I'm not sure why we're wasting time here." The arrogance in his voice made several people in the audience shift uncomfortably. I saw Tara look down, fighting back tears. I closed the file deliberately. "I'll decide what's a waste of time, Mr. Langford." He tilted his head with that infuriating smile. "Of course, Your Honor. I didn't mean to offend. I just think we should keep things efficient. I've got a meeting in Midtown after this." I looked him directly in the eye. "You'll be late." The courtroom erupted in soft laughter, but Chase's expression tightened. For the first time, I saw a crack in that polished facade. His jaw clenched, his ego bruised. "I hope you understand, Judge," he said, his voice colder now. "My father and I are generous contributors to several city programs, including judicial scholarships." The bailiff's head snapped toward him. The audience gasped. Even Tara looked horrified at what he just implied. I leaned back slowly, keeping my expression neutral. "Is that so?" "Yeah," he said with a shrug. "So let's not make this personal. This is just a misunderstanding. People like you deal with bigger cases." The silence that followed was suffocating. I didn't move, didn't blink. I simply folded my hands on the bench and looked at him for 3 long, unbearable seconds. Then, in a voice low enough that everyone had to lean forward to hear, I said, "People like me." He grinned, completely oblivious to the storm building before him. "I mean, come on, Judge. You've seen my father's name on those donation plaques. He's basically keeping the system alive. We're all part of the same machine here." And then he said it, the words that would seal his fate. "Relax, Judge," he said casually, as if talking to a subordinate. "I own half this city. Technically, I own you too." The audience gasped collectively. My bailiff froze mid-step. Tara's eyes widened in complete disbelief. I didn't speak, not for 3 full seconds. I just sat there, absorbing what this young man had just said to me, to a sitting judge in a court of law, on the record. The silence was deafening. You could hear the hum of the lights overhead, the breathing of spectators holding their breath. The moment stretched like a wire pulled taut, ready to snap. This billionaire's son sat there grinning at me, utterly unaware that he had just walked headfirst into the biggest mistake of his privileged life. When I finally spoke, my voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. "Would you like to repeat that, Mr. Langford?" He actually tilted his chin up, misreading my calm as weakness. "It's not an insult," he said, his smirk widening. "It's just reality. My family's companies, Langford Development, Langford Equity, Langford Energy, we fund half this city. We sponsor your judicial programs. We build your courthouses. You work inside one of our properties right now." He gestured vaguely toward the ceiling, as if the building itself belonged to him personally. "So, when I say I own you, Judge, I don't mean you personally. I mean the system, the world, everything around us. It all runs on Langford money." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Tara whispered under her breath, "My God, he's actually saying it." I kept my eyes locked on his. "Mr. Langford," I said, each word measured with precision, "this courtroom runs on something your money can't buy, truth, and you're about to learn how expensive lies can get." But he wasn't listening. He leaned back in his chair, stretching with that lazy arrogance of someone who had always escaped consequences. "Your Honor, you're taking this too seriously. I didn't mean to offend you. It's just, let's be honest, you don't really think this woman has a case, do you? My father already handled the police report. It was dismissed. No charges, no evidence. This is just good TV. That last line, the mockery, the complete dismissal of what we do here, it struck a nerve. The audience's whispers turned to gasps. I leaned forward, resting both hands on the bench. Let's clarify something, Mr. Langford. This isn't television for me. This is justice. I don't play pretend. You're in a courtroom that demands accountability. If you came here to perform, you're in the wrong theater. For the first time, I saw his smirk flicker. His confidence faltered just enough to betray uncertainty. He glanced at his lawyer, who wouldn't meet his eyes. I opened the folder before me. You said your father handled the police report. I've read it. I've also reviewed the supplemental evidence provided by Miss Collins. I turned to Tara. Miss Collins, for the record, tell me exactly what happened after the incident at your cafe. She clasped her hands, steadying herself. After he left, I went to the precinct to file a report. The officer said they'd look into it. 2 days later, I got a call. The case was closed. Insufficient evidence. But when I went to check the CCTV footage from our security camera, the file was corrupted. I found out later that one of Mr. Langford's employees had called my landlord, the same company that owns the building, and told them to replace the system as a courtesy. That system was removed within 24 hours. I felt my jaw tighten. Are you saying your evidence was destroyed? She nodded. Yes, Your Honor, and I have the email confirming that maintenance request. She handed the printed document to my bailiff, who brought it to me. I scanned it quickly. Langford Property Management, I read aloud. Approved by Executive Operations. That's your father's company, Mr. Langford. Chase shrugged, trying to maintain his casual demeanor but shifting uneasily now. We manage thousands of buildings, Judge. I can't control every maintenance order. I looked up at him slowly. You just said you own half the city. So which is it? The puppet master who controls everything, or the clueless child who knows nothing? The audience laughed softly. Chase's face tightened, his composure finally cracking. You think this is funny? Do you have any idea who my father is? My answer came clear and firm. I don't care who your father is. And that's the problem, isn't it? You've spent your life walking into rooms where everyone cared too much. The words hit him like physical blows. He blinked, momentarily speechless, searching for footing he couldn't find. I continued, keeping my voice low but steady. I know your type, Mr. Langford. You were raised believing your name was a shield. That money could erase mistakes, silence truth, buy forgiveness. But this, I gestured around the courtroom. This is the one room left where your father's money can't touch the floor. Tara's lips trembled. She whispered, Thank you. I turned to her gently. You don't thank me yet, Miss Collins. Justice isn't gratitude. It's restoration. Then I shifted back to Chase. Your father's influence may buy silence, but it can't buy me. I've seen men like you walk in with entitlement and walk out with humility. The difference between them and you? They learned to listen before they lost everything. Chase scoffed. You really think a lecture changes anything? This whole thing, this show, it's entertainment. You can yell, I can smile, the audience claps, and my father wires the check. That's how it works. It's all noise. I looked at him carefully. You think justice is noise? Then maybe you've never actually heard it. My words cut deep. The room went still again. Even his lawyer leaned back, silent and defeated. I looked down briefly, flipping a page. When I spoke again, my voice had that calm, almost surgical tone I reserve for moments like this. Mr. Langford, you may believe you're untouchable, but I assure you, every empire falls. And when arrogance builds the walls, it always collapses from within. I leaned back. I've been a judge for decades. I've seen men who built nothing but excuses. You've built empires out of them. He tried to interject, but his voice cracked. You can't talk to me like, Oh, I can, I said, cutting through his words, because the moment you walked through that door, you stopped being a Langford. You became a defendant, and in this room, the only thing that matters isn't your name, it's your behavior. I struck the gavel once. We'll resume after recess. And Mr. Langford, I strongly suggest you think about who really owns what. When we reconvened, the energy was completely different. The smugness that had followed Chase into the room was gone. He sat slouched, whispering furiously to his lawyer. His polished composure had crumbled. My bailiff announced the session, and the gavel's sharp crack silenced the room. Mr. Langford, I began, I trust you used the recess to reflect on your earlier statements. He forced a smile. Of course, Your Honor. I realize maybe I was a little blunt before. My apologies if my words came across as disrespectful. I tilted my head. If? He hesitated. I didn't mean any offense. I just meant that sometimes people misinterpret confidence for arrogance. Confidence, I repeated. Interesting word choice. Because confidence usually comes from merit. Arrogance, Mr. Langford, comes from entitlement. Let's see which one applies to you. I opened the thick file before me. Before this case began, I requested additional documentation. You claimed the police found no evidence connecting you to the vandalism. You said it was all handled privately. Is that correct? He nodded, relieved. Exactly. My father's legal team cooperated fully. Settled, I repeated slowly. Interesting, because what I have here tells a different story. I held up a printed report. According to the Midtown Police Department, the original case was closed, not resolved, and 2 detectives assigned to it were later reassigned without explanation. However, 3 days after that, a check for $75,000 was deposited into the Midtown Police Pension Fund, donated by Langford Development Group. The air seemed to vanish from the room. Chase's face froze. Don't bother objecting, I said before his lawyer could speak. I verified the donation through public records. Chase laughed weakly. That's philanthropy, Judge. My father donates to a lot of causes. I leaned forward slightly. Philanthropy that coincidentally appears 3 days after your case disappears. Tell me, Mr. Langford, do your father's charitable impulses always align so neatly with his legal inconveniences? I turned to my bailiff. Bring in Exhibit C. He placed a small flash drive on the desk. I nodded toward the monitor. This is the unedited surveillance footage from Miss Collins' cafe, obtained from her insurance provider, not her landlord. It was automatically backed up to the cloud before the system was removed. The color drained from Chase's face. The screen flickered to life. The grainy footage showed the nearly empty cafe, tables stacked for closing. Then the door opened. Chase, unmistakable in his tailored suit, stumbled in, clearly intoxicated. He gestured wildly, shouting. Then came the shove, the crash of a display rack, the sound of breaking glass. His voice carried through the microphone. My father owns this block. You'll regret this. The room fell dead silent, except for Chase breathing heavily through his nose. When the video ended, I looked up slowly. That was you, wasn't it? He swallowed. I was upset. They were rude to me. Stop. My voice cracked like a whip. That's enough. I closed the file with a deliberate snap. You destroyed someone's livelihood because your ego was bruised. Then you tried to hide behind your father's name. Tell me, Mr. Langford, how much is your dignity worth? The price of a window, a wall, or the next person's silence? His lawyer tried to object, but I cut him off. You may sit down. I looked directly at Chase, my voice low and cutting. You came here expecting a performance. You thought this was another stage where your father's money could control the script. But this isn't a play, Mr. Langford. This is reality. And in reality, the audience doesn't clap for villains. The gallery erupted in quiet applause despite themselves. I continued. Miss Collins, I want you to know something. Men like this build walls to protect their reputations, not their character. And every so often those walls crumble. Today is one of those days. Tara nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you, Your Honor. Chase shifted, his voice lower now. You don't understand how this works. My father, he fixes things. He'll make this right. My reply was ice cold. No, Mr. Langford, I will make this right. I paused. You've lived your life believing power means never having to say you're sorry. But here, power means responsibility, and you've shown none. When I returned from chambers to deliver my judgment, the room felt heavier. Every eye followed me as I took my seat. Mr. Langford, I began, my tone measured. Before I deliver my judgment, I want to give you an opportunity to explain something. He straightened. Your Honor, I think things have gone too far. I've already said I'm sorry. This whole situation was blown out of proportion. Wrong, I said sharply. You told a sitting judge that you owned her. You mocked a small business owner whose property you damaged. You used your father's money to bury a police report and called it philanthropy. And now you want to call this a misunderstanding? I motioned for my bailiff. Bring me the supplemental exhibits. He handed me another thick folder. My team did some digging during recess. It seems this isn't your first incident. Chase blinked. Excuse me? 3 years ago, arrested in Miami for disorderly conduct, charges dropped after a donation. A year later, assault accusation in Chicago, case dismissed after the victim withdrew. Last summer, hit and run in the Hamptons, settled privately. Do you see a pattern, Mr. Langford? He had no words. I'll tell you what I see, I continued. I see a man raised to believe that laws are for other people. I see the product of a system that rewards wealth and punishes honesty. And I see the end of that illusion right here, right now. You think money gives you power, I said. But let me tell you something, Mr. Langford. Power without character is corruption, and corruption always meets its reckoning. He tried to deflect. You're making an example out of me. You're doing this for TV, for your audience. Oh, make no mistake, I replied instantly. I don't humiliate people. They humiliate themselves. I just hold up the mirror. The audience applauded. I waited for silence. You said you own half this city. Tell me, how much of it will you own when your reputation is gone? When your father's investors see how his son conducts himself? When the world sees how easily arrogance collapses under truth? Chase's voice trembled. Please, Judge, you don't understand what this will do to me. What this will do to you? I pointed to Tara. What about what you did to her? Tara's voice cracked. He ruined everything I built. I raised my voice, not in anger, but in power. You came into a woman's business, destroyed her property, mocked her, then buried her case under money. And you have the audacity to stand here worried about what happens to you? My voice softened, but carried more force than any shout. You think you can buy respect, but respect isn't for sale. You can't purchase dignity. You can't lease humility. You can't invest in decency. Those things have to be earned, and you've earned none. I closed the folder. You said you own this city. But here's the truth, Mr. Langford. The city doesn't remember who owns its buildings. It remembers who builds them with integrity. And right now, all you've built is a monument to shame. I leaned back. I've seen hundreds of defendants come through this courtroom, thieves, liars, manipulators, but very few have managed to disgust me. You, Mr. Langford, just joined that list. The gavel struck once, loud and final. I'm ready to deliver my ruling. I adjusted my glasses and spoke clearly. For the record, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Miss Tara Collins, and against the defendant, Mr. Chase Langford. I looked at the papers. You will pay Miss Tara Collins the full cost of her property damages, $14,600, as well as an additional $25,000 in punitive damages for malicious destruction and intimidation. Furthermore, I am ordering a formal referral of this case to the District Attorney's Office for review of potential interference with evidence. Chase's mouth fell open. You can't refer me to the DA. This is small claims. It stopped being small when you started bribing your way through life, I said without blinking. His lawyer stood. We'll be appealing. I fixed him with a steady gaze. You're free to waste your client's money, counselor, but make no mistake, the record is permanent, the evidence is undeniable, and the footage you just saw will live forever in public archives. Maybe next time your client will remember that cameras don't take bribes. I leaned forward one final time. Do you know what offends me most, Mr. Langford? It's not your arrogance. I've seen that my whole career. It's that you've had every opportunity, education, privilege, connections, and you've used them to make the world smaller for people beneath you. You had every advantage and you chose corruption. His voice was thin. You don't know what it's like. What's expected of me? My father doesn't tolerate mistakes. Then maybe that's the problem, I said quietly. Maybe he raised a man who doesn't know how to face them. The line struck home. The courtroom stayed frozen in silence. I stood from my bench, something I rarely do, and the gesture sent a shiver through the room. You told me you owned me, but now I want you to look around this room and tell me what you really own. Not the building, not the cameras, not the people. What's left, Mr. Langford? Because from where I'm standing, all I see is a man whose wealth can't buy him a single ounce of respect. My tone softened slightly. Let me give you a piece of advice your father never will. The higher you build your life on arrogance, the harder it collapses when truth catches up. And today, truth just called in your debt. Chase's eyes glistened faintly, though he tried to hide it. You think this changes anything? The media will forget. My father will fix it. Oh, they'll remember, Mr. Langford, I said. They always do. You'll become the cautionary tale at every dinner table that whispers your last name. You'll be the face people point to when they say, that's what happens when you think you can buy the world. I lifted the gavel but didn't strike it yet. You told me you own everything, but after today you'll learn what ownership really means. You own this verdict, you own your disgrace, and you own the moment you looked a judge in the eye and declared yourself untouchable, only to discover you weren't. The gavel struck. The sound was thunderous, final. The courtroom erupted in applause mixed with stunned silence. Tara Collins burst into quiet tears, relief breaking through months of fear and humiliation. I gave her a small nod. You did well, I said softly. Through tears, she whispered, Thank you, Your Honor. I didn't think people like him could ever be held accountable. They can, I replied. But it takes someone brave enough to stand their ground. You reminded him, and everyone watching, that truth doesn't bow to money. I turned to my bailiff. Escort Mr. Langford out. Chase stood slowly. The arrogance that once clung to him was gone, replaced by something else, real fear. As he walked past the bench, he glanced at me, his lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. The cameras captured the look on his face, the first flicker of a man realizing his empire could crumble in a single afternoon. You know, people ask me sometimes why I do this work, why I sit on this bench day after day, hearing case after case. It's moments like these, not because I enjoy seeing someone brought low, but because sometimes, just sometimes, we get the opportunity to remind the powerful that there are still places where money doesn't matter. Within hours, that clip went viral. Headlines read, Billionaire's son humiliated in court. Judge Caprio delivers the verdict heard around the world. Late-night hosts replayed it. Memes flooded the internet. Side-by-side shots of Chase's smirk fading into panic, captioned, When owning everything means losing your soul. But the legacy of that moment wasn't entertainment. It was revelation. Because for once, millions of people saw what happens when power meets principle, when arrogance collides with accountability, when even the richest man's son learns that respect isn't inherited. I sat back in my chambers afterward, the faintest trace of a satisfied smile on my face. I don't gloat. I never have. Justice doesn't need applause. It just needs to be seen. And in that courtroom, on that day, it had been. Court adjourned.